Thanks for having me. This is, a topic that's come up a lot in recent months. So I'm really happy to have a conversation with you around what you're doing and around CIPD's guidance when it comes to financial well-being in particular.
Thank you so much for coming today.
Yeah.
And I think last month we had a Zoom call. We were talking about, we just discussing what we both doing. And
seems like ages ago.
Yes, but again, we met in the meantime in a couple of events. Then I told, "Hi, Susan, we're gonna do a podcast." You're like, "Yes,
Yes,
yeah,
let's do it."
And it's happening today. And thank you so much for coming.
Yeah.
And yeah, so those who don't know about Susan.
Yes.
So who is Susan?
So I am the engagement manager for CIPD across Scotland, Northern Ireland, and I run the policy forums across Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Wales. So it's a really exciting time to work in the people profession and be a part of the policy discussion. There's new legislation coming out everywhere with the Employment Rights Act in GB and the Good Jobs Bill. There's obviously a lot of movement. We've both been to an event this week discussing the Good Jobs Bill and the implications of that on workers, including the people profession and HR practitioners working in Northern Ireland. But one of the things that I was hoping was going to come out of that session this week, which I think is really important, is just the discussion on pay and reward. So this podcast is very timely. Talking about financial well-being is something really important that I think we need to highlight. And there are lots of people trying to work in this space, trying to get more organizations to get involved in the conversation, but it's hard right now.
It is. And when you said that, it's a very best time to do the podcast. So I know we planned this the last week and it didn't happen.
Yeah.
But I think that's for a reason.
Yeah.
Now we have better ground for doing this podcast, actually.
Exactly.
That even I was sitting there, people talking about this, and then you come up and had your speech on engagement, how this can affect the HR people who will be actually doing the work.
Yeah.
So that's a different angle.
Yeah.
And even when I done the LinkedIn post on the event, I focused on how this can affect the engagement, which people actually liked it and connected with that. So I think that's one of the best time to talk about, what our policy there, what our changes gonna happen, how this gonna affect the employee engagement. And even on the speech you done on Tuesday, you mentioned about how you're gonna engage with the employees. Even the other speakers mentioned this.
Yeah. And I'm like, who do you think is going to teach them how to do that?
Yeah.
We can talk all we want about the support that people managers need in order to deliver key information to employees, whether it's about a new policy that's coming into play or whether it's about how the organization can support you with financial well-being in general, benefits. There's so many different areas. And it's very easy to say, oh, the managers will have those discussions. The managers will improve engagement. The managers will do it. But actually, the managers don't have the skills necessary to deliver on these. Yeah. And then it comes down to the HR practitioner to say, well, what are the practicalities that we have to put in place in order to support the people managers to have these conversations and to have them be successful? So it really does come back to what we're doing to support HR practitioners in these spaces. I think one of the key things that organizations are forgetting, and CIPD has stressed this so much, that financial distress is not just a personal issue, but it's a really critical business challenge that directly impacts employee productivity, absences, retention. Like, if you don't solve this for this one factor in your benefits package, then you're not really, nothing else is going to kind of help that employee be more productive.
Yeah, because they're already stressed.
They're
Even
always
like I'm
stressed.
looking these figures, which is so alarming.
Mm-hmm.
92% of UK employees reported financial stress just last year.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's up from the year before. It was 90% of UK employees experienced money worries. And then only 15% of organizations have any formal financial well-being policy. So like, even though we're stressing to organizations, please work on like financial distress, and let's look at the challenges around supporting your people in financial well-being. Their focus tends to be more on general well-being support, or flexible working hour, and it all fits in. But really, if we can improve financial literacy, if we can improve how people are saving money, how people are managing money, if people can feel a bit of financial freedom, then that resolves a lot of these other problems. They don't need a yoga class if they still have to go home and stay up all night worrying about their bills not being paid.
Exactly. I know we can talk the whole day about what companies offer now. As you mentioned, they bring in maybe a financial advisor once in a year, having a seminar, and that's done. There's no follow up. And as you mentioned, there are lots of events regarding mental well-being, health, and all these different activities you can talk about. Reflecting back to your speech on the last Tuesday, the one you mentioned here, who gonna handle this? Who gonna deliver in these well-being activities? Who like when you say most of the business here are SMEs, and you also mentioned most of them don't have an HR, they just outsource. So in that case, who gonna handle this financial well-being or any well-being at all for the employees?
I mean, in a lot of these cases, when you're looking at SMEs, it's generally the founder or the office admin, or whoever is running the day-to-day business tasks that is kind of responsible for looking out for productivity. And there has to be a solid case for return on investment if they're going to invest in any of these solutions for financial well-being. So we have to be able to be really clear on how we can deliver the data that shows a return on investment when it comes to employee productivity, reduced absence rates. All of that has to be really kind of clear before they're going to give over an investment. But it isn't necessarily an HR practitioner that's supporting the employees. A lot of times, it's somebody who's doing the admin role, or or the founder, investors. But we need to make sure that they're understanding their employee wellness. The productivity really comes down to some of these really clear factors that they're ignoring completely.
It is because being a startup, one of the thing I do on a regular basis, primary market research, speak to a lot of HR people. I had an HR interview last week. We had a coffee with an HR, an organization of 200 staff. And I'm telling, okay, this is what we're building. This is what we're gonna measure this, measure that. And he was like, we don't even know how much is our staff turnover.
Yeah. Like, I mean, they need to get the data needs to be a bit more clear. But again, when you're working in an organization where you're just, putting out fires, or you're multitasking and you're just trying to get through the day to day, when do you set aside the time to find the data, to understand more about how you can support your employees? So, CIPD recommends a few things. We have to kind of try to implement some financial well-being support rather than just reacting to these cost of living spikes that we keep seeing. So we understand that organizations are paying more for things like statutory sick pay. The national insurance has gone up. All of, Westminster's rising costs for employers in general. So to find the extra investment to focus on supporting financial well-being for employees can be quite challenging. Never mind setting aside time to gather the data, to put together the document that proves that we can have more sustainable support for people in this area. But we want to look at, we're suggesting that organizations kind of review their total reward and look at their benefits package not just as a paycheck, but as an overall package.
Yeah.
So how can we look at the day-to-day pressures that people have, consider flexible working arrangements, which are universally highly valued by staff, and just look at whether we can promote a more holistic benefits package rather than just a paycheck.
Yes, when you say that, remember that online seminar we were sitting where the guy explained just 4 different generations in the workplace.
Yes.
You know, you have like Gen Z, millennials.
Managing a multi-generational workforce, even if you had 10 employees or less, and they're all at different stages in their life, how do you look at a benefits package that is equal to all of them?
Because some of them need just pension.
Exactly.
Some of them need just better pay. And when you look at Gen Z, they'll be like just benefits. So you need something that cater all different categories. That's where at the minute, we're looking into options like how we can offer something valuable and more inclusive, which actually cater the needs of all these different generation. I'll talk about generation and Gen Z. While watching one of your other podcasts, mentioned the Gen Z is walking away from management roles. What do you think it's happening?
I just think that there's no, and this is like my own conclusions, but it's also based on some of my lived experience, is I don't necessarily feel like Gen Z sees the reward in all of these responsibilities. So the traditional way of like working really hard, getting really skilled in your role, and then being promoted for that is not the most productive way to have an outstanding manager, right? Being an expert in what you do does not make you a good manager. So, and Gen Z see this, right?
Yeah.
They know that they can have the skills, they can be an expert, but does that mean that they want to be responsible for managing a team of people?
Yeah.
Not necessarily.
That's a whole different skill.
Yeah, it is a whole different skill. And I think, supporting line managers is a big part of what HR does. And if you don't have an HR function, we have fantastic leadership coaches out there. We have independent consultants who work in this space to come in and coach line managers. So there is that option to outsource some of this that needs to happen. But in terms of like walking away from management roles, I would say there are more pressing priorities that Gen Z want in our job rather than the responsibility of managing a team of people. I don't think there's a whole lot of reward in that for them at the moment. They're really thinking about lots of, like, for example, employee groups within the organization that are really passionate. Once they find that connection with a team of people, they're just as happy to go there than to have to be a manager on their own. It's a very siloed environment sometimes to be a manager.
Yeah.
It can be really challenging. You don't often, in an SME as a manager, you don't often have someone working at your same level that you can confide in or speak to. So it can be a really isolating role. And, you only have to scroll through Instagram to see all of these people saying, no, thanks.
Is that also reflects back on your experience in retail and fashion?
I mean, I think it definitely, for me, I have a background in working in retail. And it's a very thankless job sometimes being a manager. I think that you get much more camaraderie, much more like satisfaction out of your job when you're surrounded by a team of peers rather than being
That's been me doing
manager
for the past 5 years.
Yeah.
Manage.
It can be really hard and really isolating. So, but
obviously
no.
the people management will be the biggest part of
I think that's the key when you're implementing any benefit to a team is how it's delivered.
Yes.
Right. And so when you don't necessarily have an in-house HR person, especially a CIPD qualified HR practitioner, I think you can come across challenges of benefits not working or being taken up by employees because it's not communicated properly. And maybe that's because the managers don't know. They don't know how to utilize these benefits. They don't know, they don't use them themselves. So how are they meant to get people more engaged in that? And especially on, you brought up on Tuesday, we talked a lot about all of this new legislation. There's so much new legislation coming in. I don't think that line managers are necessarily going to be fluent in explaining all of these benefits to their teams. And HR has to somehow find the time to go through, this is what we're introducing, and for someone like me, I'm a millennial. I know I don't look it, but for someone like me, it's fantastic to see some of these initiatives coming in, like the paternal leave that's coming into place for dads to take time off work, or even the parental bereavement leave and pay. These are all things that I really wish were around when I was at that stage in my life where I needed it. But I'm so happy to see them come in. If I was an employee working for an organization, would that benefit make or break me for working there? Probably not. It's not really relevant. So again, how can we make these benefits and supports around things like financial well-being, where people don't have a policy in place, and there isn't going to be one in the new jobs bill. But how can we make those accessible for people, and how can we get people more engaged in it? And I think it does come down to the line manager being more educated on how they're communicating that benefit.
Where in between the panels we had a table discussion, so we were discussing about the talks.
Yes.
And
what was your table chatting about?
So I was there as a manager, then another person who's a supervisor or on a big company. So we were talking like how the team's gonna know about all these changes, who's gonna tell them. And when you look at, we are the ones who gonna actually deliver this, Obviously on one side you have the stakeholders, you'll be communicating with them, okay, what's the cost? So that's one side. And the other side, we have to manage a team and what they need. And so you'll be the manager will be the one who have to listen to both the sides. And even with any benefits at all, as you mentioned, they are the ones to deliver this to the teams. And as you mentioned, are they like, even when you talk about HR, are they like CIPD qualified, or do they know what they're doing? So, and this may vary according to industries. Every sector is different. Even that room on Tuesday.
Oh, massive differences.
Yeah, like when you look at the size of the industry, when you look at hospitality, and they're talking about 0-hour contract and stuff, and hospitality and the other sectors. But how many companies from those industry were in the room?
Yeah, were represented. I didn't see many from hospitality. I could be wrong. There was a lot of manufacturing. There was a lot of financial services. So yeah, it's an interesting one, because we want to assume that people are going to be prepared to deliver on these initiatives. We want to assume that the support is there, that people are fluent in being able to talk about these things. But whether that's the reality, I don't know. I'm getting feedback that people aren't prepared. Did you speak to Eileen Hanna, who was there? She's big on reward and compensation. She's my personal expert on this area. But talking to her, there wasn't enough discussion around the pay transparency, about pay reporting. And I do worry that we're not prepared for that. And I think that when we talk about the preparedness of organizations versus the people who have to implement these things, there's a gap.
Still not sure, how this gonna be implemented. As you mentioned, the real people who deal with this, the HR people, and are they prepared, and are the businesses prepared? So that's the next thing I was about to ask, and how the SMEs gonna cope with this.
I mean, I just think for some of the SMEs that are turning up to these events, that are learning as much as they can. They're going on the CIPD website. They're going on the Labor Relations Agency website. They're reaching out to employment law firms that are local, that understand the new laws that are coming in, just to get some free advice or to get any content that they can to deliver. But as I mentioned, I mean, look, if I could wave a magic wand and have like someone like Craig come in and work with the SME on building better cultural relationships and employee engagement, someone like Eileen come in and fix their reward problems and paying compensation, someone like Claire Nutt come in and implement their AI strategy so it's effective. Like, if I could do that, I would, because I know of all these experts that work in the field. But how can we support SMEs without, like someone mentioned to me on Tuesday, yes, the resources are there for them, but they can't afford to pay it, not with the rising costs of all of these other things.
I'm not sure, did you notice, because the room was of 90 plus people there.
Yeah.
But these other people are actively looking into options, how to support their employees and the recent changes.
Yeah.
But even the bills coming, this is for organizations to make sure they are implementing this, they are engaging with the employees. But where are they? They were not in the room.
I know. There was quite a few SMEs scattered in the room, and I think look, there are lots of great organizations in Northern Ireland who are progressively implementing these things ahead of being told that they have to.
Yeah.
There's so many good SMEs out there who are just like, this is probably coming in the pipeline, whether it comes to fruition or not. Let's just get started on it. Let's focus on our priorities when it comes to how we're delivering our employee benefits. Let's just give paternal care now instead of waiting. Let's offer some of these changes now. And so I do think that there's a lot of good work being done, but for those who have their head in the sand and are kind of like, well, we'll do it when we're told we have to. And I did meet a couple of those at the event on Tuesday.
You don't get them always. Anyway.
But they're in for like a bit of a shock. I mean, I was really clear that somebody asked the question, what happens if you don't do anything? And I was like, well, then your business isn't going to survive, because employees aren't going to want to stay in an organization that isn't progressively meeting their needs and offering them some of the benefits that they can get anywhere else. Yeah. So, if we're waiting for legislation to tell us what's right for our customers or for our employees, and if we're waiting for legislation to tell us like what's a good job, then that organization probably isn't going to have employees for very long. Whereas if you're taking the time to kind of gather a bit of data, find out what employees really need, what can boost productivity, what can help them out with their well-being, especially financial well-being, those are the organizations that'll have better retention. Those are the organizations that people want to work for, even if they don't necessarily have the highest salaries, if they don't have, all of the financial rewards that the PwCs or the Deloittes or the Danske Banks can offer. As long as they're, investing in their people in other ways, then they'll see that return on investment.
Exactly. That's the best benefit you can offer as well, helping them to become financially resilient themselves.
Yeah.
And how's your journey so far, from Boston and CIPD?
I mean, working for CIPD is fantastic because for a number of reasons, but the first one for me is that the people profession is such a diverse career path. So you can go into HR and wear many hats. You will be working on employee engagement. You will be working on reward and benefits. You'll be working on the best AI efficiencies that you can make for your organization. You'll be working on so many different areas that for me, working for CIPD and being able to support our people professionals in whatever it is that they're being challenged with is really interesting. So, on Tuesday, we talked a lot about policy. Today, we're here talking about like financial well-being, financial success, financial education within organizations. I've been on here before talking about apprenticeships.
Yeah.
So there's such a diverse and broad scope of work with CIPD. That's why I really enjoy it. I think, when I look back to my employment in America, it was very, very different in terms of like the benefits that organizations can offer.
Yeah.
I won't even get started with the lack of maternity leave, which is non-existent in America. But there's just a really stark contrast between how organizations work over here and how we view HR versus what that looks like in America, which is very different. I think HR in America is still seen as like the policing body that works for the organization, not for the employee. Whereas here, we're very much seen to represent employee rights. We're just as much, it's very balanced, just as much as we're here to help organizations thrive. So I think being a people practitioner in the UK compared to where I've come from, I have a very clear understanding of like how important HR is and how important the people profession is, not just to the organizations that they're working with or for, but to society as a whole, because they do have such an impact on people's well-being at work. So that's why, I love working at CIPD, is because I get to have all of these fantastic conversations about lots of diverse topics. And I am not an expert in any of these topics. If you really want an expert on this podcast, I would have gotten Charles Cotton from CIPD to come on. But again, if you go onto our website and read Charles Cotton's reports or his insights, he's brilliant at describing in more detail about what financial well-being means actually to improve company performance. And in general, society, like how we can really, we can talk about well-being all day long, but in reality, if people have debt and they're stressed about that, or if people are in a financial situation where an emergency can cause them to go into panic or to cause them to go into debt unexpectedly, like that is a direct impact on organizational performance and productivity.
It has that part. Even the business don't realize how bad it gets because, and the so-called well-being tools out there, some of them, they offer access to your pay before your payday.
Yeah.
But when you actually look at that, if someone actually need their pay before the payday, they are probably going to the debt cycle. So, but they are called well-being apps.
Yeah.
So that's where, we are trying to being proactive and trying to see how to fix this, how to offer a benefit that actually, not just asking people to save or not just asking people to budget, but we're giving them tools to see where their money going, where their money actually end up spending and is there room for saving, and even about financial education, rather than giving a brochure to check. We say, okay, we want to watch this video or, do this, so that making them people do. And you briefly touched this about SMEs outsourcing their HR thing.
They have to.
And so when you do that, so who's going to handle the financial well-being aspect in an organization where the HR is already outsourced? Obviously, there are resources, in CIPD where, organization can check and all this stuff. So in that case, who's going to champion this employee well-being in an organization?
I think this is where your founders or your, chief execs, they need to step in and say, what kind of resources are out there, what are available to me. I think the problem with financial well-being at the moment is sometimes it's a really tricky market to navigate. And these people who are not, they don't understand, we might not have all the data about what their employees need, but they're trying to find solutions, right? They're desperate. They would love to have a solution presented to them that ticked all the boxes, but sometimes it can be a bit of a saturated market where you're not sure which financial well-being resource is best for your company, because a lot of, like you said, industries and sectors will differ in terms of demographic, in terms of what people need. But I do believe that, there is there is something to be said for apps, gamified apps especially.
Yeah.
So there's a gamified app at CIPD, and it's all about like fitness.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
let me just preface by saying I have never been on the leaderboard in this.
But you tried.
Have I tried? I think for me, what's really encouraging is that some of my closest colleagues, especially this guy Jamie and the policy lead Marek, they are like on this app because the app is rewarding them for like running, how far they go, how often they go, frequency, all of this. And they're amazing at like winning rewards on this, and they're actually really addicted to it.
Yeah.
And so like, because they're addicted to this physical activity, they're both like really, they're friends of mine. We work really closely together, but they're amazing at like looking at the rewards that they're getting. And we also used to have someone who worked in the learning team who his name was David, and he was he would go on there and just smash it. He'd be on the leaderboard all the time. And, they do get addicted to this healthy behavior. Yeah. And I think that's really encouraging when I see people in my own workplace engaging with this app that's rewarding them either financially or giving them employee discounts or whatever it is.
Some apps even give free coffee.
Exactly. And so they're getting, yes, I think that's one of the things is that like some Amazon vouchers, things that they really
Cinema
want and need. Yeah. And they save up. I mean, Jamie was telling me how he's saving up for some Eurostar ticket. Yeah. Like, so there are different things that gamified apps do for employees that do really get them engaged, the majority of them, regardless of what generation they're in, because the two individuals I'm talking about, I believe, fall into different gen categories. But for the most part, I do think having addictions to a workplace app that supports something like your financial well-being and your mental health is really beneficial. Now, I am addicted to a different app. I'm addicted to the Calm app, which helps me sleep. It helps me take a 5-minute meditation during the day if I need to. Like, that's the kind of stuff that I'm addicted to. Yeah. I'm addicted to sleeping, really. I actually think now, it's been so many years, but I actually think now I wouldn't be able to go to sleep without some kind of story. Isn't that bizarre? And so I get these big long streaks of like meditation days and stuff.
I met another founder, so she created an app which actually put you in sleep. So it creates some sound.
Yes.
That connect with your brain.
I know all the sounds. I know the white noises compared to the brown noises, compared to all of these like MZHs. I'm all over that, which is, one of the things I absolutely love. But I think when it comes to supporting things like sleep, supporting things like stress, physical exercise, movement, meditation, these are all part of it. And you can offer these, but actually, if people are still feeling stress from debt or from bad financial decisions or feeling like they're out of pocket or they're always in the red or they're finding it really hard to come back from a debt, an unexpected bill, these are all things that we need to circle back. Because if we could solve for that, if we could help people get to a point where everyone had, money in their savings account because they've been gamified to look at their finances properly and try and save money, then all of those other things, the meditation, the yoga, the running, all of those things kind of fall into place.
Again, even for PrizeBNK, we didn't invent anything new. So we just looked at, okay, what's people are doing right now? As you said, people would like to get rewards. They would like to be on leaderboard.
Yeah.
They like to get these badges.
It's psychologically thrilling.
We took that and put in the financial well-being. And we want to try that, okay, if people are doing that, why don't they look at their finances and feel like, okay, if you do this, that means if you simply just calculate your emergency fund, like if you know what you need for the next 3 months, just in case something happens, So I'm gonna give them a reward for doing this. And if you
Yeah.
watch a video on how to save or how to budget, that's another badge they earn. As you said, they may get a coffee or get another reward.
Oh God, people love a discount.
Yeah.
I mean, I love a discount. Who doesn't love a discount? Give me a gift card to Amazon any day. I know I shouldn't say that. I do support small businesses, but I think I agree with you 100%. And one of the things that has come up recently is organizations are offering loads of benefits to people and people just aren't picking up on them. So like even there was an organization I was working for recently who had, a well-being function. They had Medicash, which is like you pay for your dentist or doctor and you get the cash back. They had pensions advisors and people just weren't using them. And it was like, what's the barrier? What's the challenge here? So is it accessibility? Is it that the actual program itself is difficult to navigate and like a challenge? So when you go online you book an appointment and now you have to upload your receipts. Is it challenging? Are they telling you your receipts aren't in the right format? Go back and find, the I don't know, legitimacy of the person that you saw. And you're just like, this is not easy.
Yeah.
So, organizations are spending so much money on these incentives. And if 70% of your workforce aren't using all of them, that's a huge waste of money.
The UK average is 92% of the employees not even using the employee well-being apps. Because only 8% is the engagement rate.
Ugh. It's
because
just
it doesn't matter how much
heartbreaking.
you're giving out, but do you know how many people are actually using it?
Yeah.
That's a concerning.
And if they're
percentage.
not using it, it's not to say just scrap it. It's to find out why.
Yeah.
So like, why aren't they using it? Is it because it's not addictive enough? Is it because they have no interest in it? Is it an accessibility issue? There are so many. Is it because it's not right for their needs at this point in their life?
Yeah.
Like, there's so many.
Is that a priority for them?
Exactly.
Because most of the well-being benefit, I don't want to mention a name, but they offer just discounts.
Yeah.
If you're shopping from this site, 30%, another site, 40%. So it's more like, letting them spend more could be reason. And other benefits, as I said earlier, just telling them what to do.
Yes.
So
it's not accessible. I just think people don't pick them up, and that's part of the problem.
Maybe not. Who wants to do more homework?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I do enough homework. I've got an 8-year-old who has way too much homework, and I'm sat up with him most nights. But yeah, you're right. I think we need to start thinking about, we need to move away from offering more benefits, thinking about better pensions, thinking about higher salaries, and we need to think more about functionality. Like, what can we do without spending a ton of money, but how can we get people engaged in improving this part of their life?
Yeah.
I actually read something, it was like, maybe it was a podcast recording that I had read the transcript from, but it said that if we could incentivize people to save £1,000 in their savings account, how would their personal well-being, like how much would their well-being improve just by feeling that sense of having support in their savings?
I know what you're talking about. There's a podcast I've seen where emergency fund. So if you have enough fund to survive for 3 months in your bank account, that gives you so much relief.
Yes, but it's not just relief, it's confidence.
Yeah.
It's feeling a sense of you'll sleep better.
Yeah.
Your stress levels go down. Your physical well-being improves. Your emotional well-being improves. Your confidence at work, the way that you collaborate with people, the way you communicate, you're not distracted. There are so many benefits for the organization if you have that emergency fund. And I think there's a statistic I have here somewhere from the latest CIPD reporting.
So even when you say that, 1/3 of the UK population don't have an emergency fund.
And
So
here, so over 30% of employees reported that money worries negatively affect their workplace performance, with workers suffering from loss of sleep, stress, reduction, and reduced concentration, which is this word we've been hearing called presenteeism, right? So presenteeism is rising even when attendance is attendance rates are fine. They're not increasing massively. So people aren't calling out sick, but they're showing up to work and they're not really there. They're, completely distracted. And I think that many companies sort of mistakenly treat financial well-being as an add-on rather than the core strategic issue. And I think once we focus on financial well-being as the core strategic issue, then we'll see these significantly better results from productivity, and just have a positive impact on their overall well-being. So they'll want to go out for a run. They'll want to, be able to concentrate on work and then take a minute to go for a walk or do something physical that'll make them feel better. But again, we just need to target this issue, I think.
So then we thought about how we can do it better, and there's a couple of things came upon, even so SMEs still need an option to get the service to their employees regardless if they have an HR or not. So we looked at all the existing solutions. Most of them need an HR to deploy this. So we made a solution where even if you don't have an HR, as a business owner, you can still deploy this to your workforce.
Brilliant.
So it doesn't even work with your payroll or HR system. That means you can get the service to your employees. Then we work as a standalone app where they can download and use this. And actually rewarding them, of course, giving coffee or discounts is good, but we want to actually reward them with incentivizing them for improving their savings, which means they actually get the cash for saving more. Again, that's the best motivation.
That is the best motivation, I think, for people.
The more you save, you get more chance to improve the savings. And still, what could be the biggest barrier for the SMEs to getting any well-being app to their employees, if there is a barrier?
So, I mean, SMEs are really struggling at the moment with the cost of living crisis that's hitting their employees. They're also having to battle with all of the minimum wage pay increases. As I mentioned earlier, the national insurance increases. There's a lot of bootstrapping going on and they're struggling. But I think that it's a catch-22, right? So if you think about a circle and you have organizations that are struggling to spend money, but they need to spend money in order to invest in their people. Then you have their people who are unproductive because there is no investment in them. So it just keeps going round and round in a circle. At some point, the organization has to invest more in employee benefits in order to get that person to be more productive, in order to see increased productivity and profits in their organization, and then that breaks the cycle. So it's a tricky one for SMEs, and I do feel for them. But again, if we could solve the financial well-being for organizations, you're going to see less retention. You're going to see more profitability from employees being more engaged. But how we get there, it's got to be down to either outsourcing or, finding a way to put someone in charge of managing this within the organization. Because if you don't have an HR practitioner to do it, it is really tricky.
2 seconds. Could you please text Steve on a podcast and we'll call back soon?
That's Steve.
Yeah.
So
okay. So we already talked about rewarding them, trying to get to the leaderboard. That's what Duolingo was so famous
Oh,
for,
yes, yes, of
So
course.
they gamified all this, learning thing. So we want to try to gamify the same in the personal finances. Like, obviously, people don't want to talk about money
Yeah.
in general.
Well, this is the other problem is that, organizations don't want to be seen as, well, the paternal person that has to worry about people's finances. Like, people should be taking care of their own finances. We didn't cause this. Why should we have to step in and fix it? But actually, it's because it's a direct implication to their profitability. I think with Duolingo, right, when people want to learn a language, or they want to learn anything, a skill.
Yeah.
If it's for their own personal development, they're more incentivized to try it.
Yeah.
And then Duolingo has this really clever thing of getting them addicted to keep coming back. And, you're on a streak, keep it going. I think when it comes to like solving your financial challenges, unless you have the financial acumen or the financial fluency to understand those challenges to begin with, I'm not quite sure they're going to be as incentivized to pick that up. So where can we get the information to say, this is something that you really need to be focusing on because it'll help you in your life outside of work.
Yeah.
And I think more organizations just need to be prepared for that conversation.
Because this thing, not something we teach in schools.
No.
Nobody.
Don't get me started on the education system.
Nobody talk about emergency fund, or nobody talk about how to save, what is compounding, how to invest.
And the problem with the problem I see with that is if it doesn't come from the schools, it has to come from the parents.
Yes.
And if the parents aren't aware of these lacks in their knowledge or the gaps in their knowledge when it comes to financial literacy and financial well-being, I think that we're just repeating the cycle.
Yeah.
We're perpetuating for another generation to come through and have financial deficiencies in the way that they manage their money.
Yeah. So I've been speaking to one of my colleagues. They're like every month for the last 4 years, when I get paid £100 go to S&P 500, then only I even start spending it. Then my colleague was like, "What is S&P 500?" I was like, and that's fair. Like, we are like,
Sure.
How many people know, like, they don't realize even there is inflation.
Yeah.
You have £100 today, that doesn't worth £100 next
No.
year.
I mean, forget about investments and, there's so much equity out there that people don't understand. I mean, my parents are of an aging retired population. Every time I speak to them, it's about stocks, shares, ISAs, like that's all. They literally have nothing else to do at this stage in their life. And I think it's really interesting because none of that knowledge about trading, shares, investment, none of that knowledge came from my schooling. All of that would have come from like what my parents would have taught me. So when we're working in a society where external investing, stock markets, all of that is quite foreign to people, I think it's a real challenge to get them to a place where they say, as much as I like Duolingo, I understand what French is and I want to learn it.
Yeah.
But do I understand financial literacy enough to say, I want to fix this problem?
Yeah.
Or do they just perpetually feel like they're in debt or perpetually feel like they're stressed about money?
Yeah.
So that's what we need to get them out of. We need to start having the conversation. And you mentioned it earlier, organizations don't want to take on that role because it's too personal. It's none of my business. I don't want to get involved. But even just putting out the, resources to say, this is something you should maybe look into, and people thinking, I've never thought of myself not being in debt, or I've never understood what an APR is. Like some people are even at that stage.
What is APR? What is AER?
Exactly. Or like, how can I pay off this credit card faster? Like understand, I mean, look, people like Martin Lewis are godsends to the country because they really do help people navigate financial situations. But I think when organizations step in and offer solutions, people will start to engage a bit more.
Yeah, because at least they get a taste of okay how how this look like. Otherwise, obviously, if someone want to learn, they can go and find all this information. That's what I learn about all this, But we are giving an option to someone who let them think about this. I think that's the biggest advantage of providing this as a benefit.
Yeah.
And this will be benefit they can actually use. Again, this whole thing about paying more and more, but there's a point you can't pay more, but you can help your employees.
Yes.
To get better at their personal finances.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what we need to start doing, because they're not going to get that in education, unfortunately. And a lot of kids aren't going to get that from their parents. Even to this day, there's so much of it. So if employers can kind of step in and say, look, we understand we didn't get you into debt. We didn't get you into this financial hardship, but we'll help you. We'll give you some tools and resources so that you can get yourself out of it. That can be a lifeline for somebody.
And study by Deloitte says if you spend £1 on employee financial well-being, the ROI is £5.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
Like where else you can get that much return on investment? But for us, the challenge is obviously we're going for the SME market, which is the most underserved market.
Yeah.
When you talk about well-being, but the challenge for us is to tell the business, okay, this is what you're gonna get.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's a hard sell.
I know.
You're educating them as well.
And yes, there's that £5 return that has been reported, but it's also just so much about understanding where the employee is mentally and the productivity that they want to see, or even being innovative or having someone who's really engaged. Like, you look at your most engaged employee, you look at your people who are innovating the most. I would bet you quite a bit, I'm not a gambling person myself, but I would bet you that they're not going home at night and thinking about how much debt they're in, or having to worry about how they're going to pay the mortgage at the end of the month. Because that innovative person, that person who turns up and is switched on and is really engaged, they are focusing on how they can be their best selves and bring some strategy to help develop the SME or the organization that they work in. They're thinking about work and productivity. And sometimes I go home at night and I'm just sitting there thinking about how I can prepare myself for the next day, or what to expect, or thinking about something that I learned from Gordon Parks or something I picked up from Mark McAllister, and, really just thinking about work, because it is interesting and I am switched on and engaged, but that isn't, that's to say I don't have a financial strain constantly in my mind. And I think organizations that start to understand why CIPD has always been really adamant that this needs to be a priority in their strategy, is because it affects so much more than the financial return. You're going to see a completely different employee if there is less stress financially on that person.
I know we mentioned AI a couple of times.
Yes.
On this. Nowadays, you can't do a podcast without mentioning AI. But so we want to simplify things. When you say, okay, we can tell people, you have to look at how much you're spending, you have to budget all the stuff. But we are creating a tool where you simply connect your bank accounts through open banking, then literally tells you, this is what you need for your emergency fund.
Yeah. Let's get there.
Yeah. This is what you have to save
to
make sure you have a safety buffer. This is what you spend for the last 3 months for a coffee.
Yeah. Oh God, I would hate to see. Sometimes I go on my banking app and I'll look at how much I've spent at one of the coffee shops, and it's really heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But again, it's something that I can identify, and I can think the next time I go, can I just make one at home before I leave the house? Can I, can I invest in another coffee mug, because I've got travel mugs all over that I use, because I'm trying to get into the habit of making my own. So it is these little habits.
You'll be heartbroken, because the next feature will be, if you wouldn't spend that much money on coffee, if we put that money in S&P 500.
Oh my gosh, does it tell you that?
Yeah.
Yes. That's brilliant.
So that's
wow.
giving an idea on that. Then I seen the report from CIPD you shared earlier where you talk about financial well-being. 75% of the businesses don't have a financial well-being strategy.
Yeah.
So does CIPD see open banking or financial well-being as an innovation for employee reward strategy moving forward?
We definitely think it should be, again, part of that holistic package. We shouldn't just be talking about like pay and, the benefits that are coming in through legislation. We need to be prioritizing financial well-being as that core strategy.
Yeah.
And even if we don't have a specialist coming in that's been outsourced, even if we don't have an in-house HR person, it has to kind of be part of the conversation because it has this ripple effect on how the person turns up to work, and it is support for your employees, and it should come before any of the other benefits.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
I know. I wish we can, take this conversation the whole day long.
I know.
Not only
mean,
just
we haven't even talked about like the behavioral science behind all of this, but like, yeah, we have.
What do you want to add on with the behavioral science?
Well, I just think it's really interesting because I've not worked in an organization with a gamified app before.
Okay.
And I see the benefits of that through, how much my colleagues use it. I have used it. I'm not going to say I don't because there is a link on there that gives you coins for doing meditations and stuff, which as you know, I am a keen advocate for. So to me, is this the way forward? Like, have we thought about, obviously we know that younger generations are very much attuned to their mobile devices and they're very much engaged with apps that are gamified. Things like Instagram, Facebook, all of these apps are really addictive, not in a good way, not with like a positive outcome. But how are we like incorporating organizations with older generations? How are we kind of catering to them? Because that's what I really want to do is make sure when we're introducing something that's gamified, we're being inclusive.
Yeah.
But to me, showing people what their coffee money could have done if they had invested it, or even getting people to start to have that buffer savings account so that they can, again, feel a lot more secure in their day-to-day life.
That's a big thing for me, emergency fund.
Yeah, the
because
emergency
even
fund.
the survey we done like a employee well-being survey, and 70% of the people don't have an emergency fund.
And there was a study out there that said if you had an emergency bill of £300, how many people would have to go into their savings for that? And it was something like 40%, 30 or 40% of people would have to, not go into their savings, go into debt, go into credit debt or creditor's debt just to pay for a £300 emergency.
And one of the HR interview I had, then they were like, people don't have money. It's not because they're not making much money. It's because they're spending a lot.
Yeah.
So it's
in the wrong place.
Yeah. So it's good to know where the money is going. So that's what we're trying to get this all information. As you said, it should be inclusive. See the budgeting apps I use. It's overwhelming. It's a lot of stuff on it, and you get lost using all the features.
I can't use a budgeting app. It would drive me mad.
So we were thinking like how we can tell the user in a very simple way. As you said, it could be 50-year-old, it could be 20-year-old, but it should cater the needs of all different groups. So that's what we're working on it. When you think about UI, UX, we'll be like how simple it can be, tell the user. So that's what always in the mind, because you always build something which you wish it was there for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's definitely what some of the founders come from as well.
It's interesting. Brilliant.
I know. So that was a really insightful talk. I think it was more like a masterclass on well-being.
I mean, when it comes to financial well-being, we have some brilliant experts at CIPD. I mentioned Charles Cotton earlier. Some of his work online is really supported many people working in the space, whether it's independent consultants or founders, SMEs. We share a lot of our knowledge with people who not only are CIPD members, but those that are non-members as well, because socially responsible thing to do. I will say, though, there are so many organizations who are doing great things in the space of employee engagement, employee voice, understanding what their people are looking for. There are lots of people doing good work in reward. And in Northern Ireland especially, we would like to recognize them, wouldn't we? That would be amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do a shameless plug again. We have the CIPD Northern Ireland Awards coming up on October 1st. Entries for the awards close in 2 weeks, which is the end of June, so around the 19th. We're going to be closing entries, and I would love to see some organizations who are doing great things in the space around well-being, around financial well-being initiatives, around employee engagement, how we're gathering data through employee voice. There are so many different categories that I think it's a real highlight of the year for Northern Ireland specifically to show how progressive we can be in some of these spaces. And that's why the awards are really important for us, particularly because we are a devolved nation. We don't follow the GB agenda. Even when it comes to the Good Jobs Bill, there are some nuances that are very different to the ERA. And I think that highlighting that we're doing things uniquely and successfully is really important. So please do.
I'll include a link.
Yes, brilliant.
Below the video so that people can find out more.
It's just such an important, time of year for us to. One of the biggest things for HR practitioners or people practitioners to do, consultants even, is to do that reflective practice. Like, what have we actually succeeded in? How have we made a difference? Why does my role matter? Am I contributing the way that I want to? And I think this is a good opportunity to do that. So, thanks for that.
Yeah, no worries again. And thanks for coming today. Thanks for being on the podcast. We have 2 more mics, so you can bring those people you said.
Yes.
Who are more.
Great.
More idea of financial well-being and those.
I'll
guys.
bring some winners if we get any good entries this year.
2 more mics. We can do a podcast with 4 people on.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sanil.
That was really good.
Thanks, Sanil.
Cheers.
All right.